Okay, dreamer, please.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be checking out the August tier list for 7 nights, and there are many changes I would say that has happened. We have 4 new heroes, namely Mythical Awakened Orly, Chip, Mythical Awakened Tio, and Baal. Okay, and I will be inserting them into the tier list, and we are going to check out some of the various changes that has occurred to the PvP side as well as the PvE side, and I have done a lot of shifting. Okay, so this is the combined tier list that we have, and we're going to look at the PvP comparison right now. Now, if you remember in June, okay, we had this new kind of arrangement for PvP whereby I segregated the heroes based on their utility in the various tiers. Okay, so Tierlist is the leader of the offensive heroes, followed by Fire and Cult, Fenrir, Jack, Red Grid, and Anti, whom I said most people are actually using her as well in offensive teams. And how that has changed in August is that I kind of shifted Red Grid to the front. Okay, Fenrir is less used, but he is actually still pretty decent. I've seen some teams that are still running him, so he's not completely gone to dust, and I think you as a player, if you're running offensive team, you can still use him. I think you probably will get to Grand because he's actually pretty frail and his damage multipliers are not that high ultimately. Now, the first 5 heroes are the ones that currently form the best offensive team, and yes, Cult is still very much appreciated. Okay, Anti does make an appearance once in a while. Anti will sometimes replace Red Grid. In that case, you will have a you will have an Anti, Jack, Cult, Fi, and Dylan's team. Okay, now the newcomers for the offensive teams are Tio and Chip, and unfortunately they do not make it to the SS tier, which is very sad because Tio is such a highly anticipated and highly popular hero in 7 Nights. But unfortunately, he just does not make the cut to go that far, into the top tier arena in terms of offensive team composition, because he doesn't really have the utility that the others already have. Okay, in terms of Tio, he is really pretty much a damage dealer. His skills, except for buff duration reduction, are just lack of any other effects. Okay, he does have isolation, which is pretty good, and I think he is pretty much suitable for newer and returning players who want to use Tio because of how cool he is. And I think his skill set is so general that it is going to be very good in the lower tier arenas. Okay, as for Chip, Chip is actually also someone that is not used as much in the top tiers at all. Okay, surprisingly, because he was designed to counter Anti. Okay, based on whatever his skill set is. He does negate revive. He also has a skill, his awakened skill, that does 2 kind of effects, so that actually gets rid of Anti's double skill nullification. Okay, but unfortunately it just doesn't seem to be the case because his stats could be an issue whereby he dies faster than Anti dies, and yeah, in that case not many top players are using him, so at most I can put him as the S tier. He does have a very fun skill set though. Okay, so previously in the S tier, we also do have Truth, Iris, and Eileen, whom I have all shifted downwards. Okay, the reason is because I feel that with Tio and Chip around now, I mean especially with Tio, I don't think you will be using Truth and Iris and Eileen that often. Okay, furthermore, I think with the synthesis for Prime Heroes and the free Fi that many new players can get from the jumping check-in, I think it is possible to actually run a very legit offensive team right from the start of your game. Especially with Red Grid being more and more common now because she's in selectors, and Anti and Jack's synthesis cost has also reduced since June. Right, so I think they are a lot more accessible, and with those heroes in place, you are definitely not going to be using Truth, Iris, and Eileen that much anymore. In fact, I don't even think Iris is that good, to be honest. I haven't seen her at all. I'm not even sure if the lower tier is using her, so that's gonna be something you want to consider. Okay, but she's still there because she's still pretty new, and I just have to put her face there. So these 3 are the ones that shifted down. For Rudy, Rangrid, Gerard, and Judas, they are still decent. Okay, they can still be used as the 5th unit in the offensive team. Or if you are just running 3 offensive units, you can also use 2 other non-offensive units, whereby Rudy and Gerard or Rudy and Judas are actually pretty good options. Okay. I have actually removed Clemith and Chris from the A tier because I think they also no longer, fit very well into the offensive team at all. Previously, I put them there because they were very easily accessible options as 5th options, right? And currently, I feel that with Truth, which is free for everyone, and Iris is super common, I think it is so much easier to just use a proper offensive hero rather than throw in Chris or Clemith, who doesn't really synergize well with the rest of the offensive team. Okay, so these are the tier list changes for the offensive team, and with that we're gonna move on to the Magic team. Now in the Magic team, there's even more changes, and I think this is one of the most flexible teams currently, especially with Baal's release. Okay, so previously we had Yonhee as the main leader of the Magic team, with Anti and Eve being the 2 standard heroes. Some people do opt for Scoot as the 4th option, or Rin as the 4th option, or they can also go with a Judas Rudy combination. Now over the past 2 months, things have actually changed. We are seeing more Rangrid being used with Judas instead, so I shifted Rudy down because I checked the top few ranks, and rarely people actually use Rudy in Magic teams anymore. I'm not saying that he is bad. He is extremely good. In fact, if there's a middle tier between the SS and the S tier, I would put him there, okay? But the thing is, Rangrid is so much better because she not only provides resistance rate increases for your backline, she also increases lethal rate. And as you know, for a Magic team to really do well, you want to be doing damage. So that's why Rangrid's lethal buff actually helps so much more compared to Rudy, who only gives your Magic team more survivability, but the damage wise, that could be lacking. Okay, so I've shifted Rangrid up, and currently with Baal's release, Baal is a phenomenal Magic hero that, if you put her in, you will be seeing a lot more wins because of her passive, because of her utility in terms of the isolation casting, and she also has a HP swap which gives her some sort of bulk, and she also has elimination. She is just really good. But the main thing is having her at level 44. At level 44, she gains the ability to reduce defense of your enemy team by 50% straight off. Okay, that is super good for many teams. In fact, later we'll see her in the universal team here as well, as you can see. But she will be a staple in Magic teams from now on, and you can use Rangrid, and Rangrid is pretty much a staple as well, I feel. You can of course use Judas and Rudy. For your 4th option, you can even go with Rin. Rin does need 4 Magic heroes to work, so you can use Yonhee, Anti, Baal, and Rin, and maybe Rangrid. Or you can also use these 5, which is Yonhee, Baal, Scoot, Anti, and Rangrid. Okay, Eve is of course another option for you, but Eve's utility somewhat has dropped a little. Not saying that she's bad, because she hits like a truck when you give her the right stamps and you gear her well. So she's still in the SS tier, but she's just less used now, especially with Baal and Anti being so much more important in the team. Okay, for the S tier, we have Mythical Orally here. Nothing much has changed in the S tier. Everyone is still there, but Orally is added because I feel that she is definitely usable in lower tier arenas because of her stats. Okay, but in higher tier arenas, she is gonna get shredded so quickly that she won't do a thing. She also has isolation. She also has amplification, magic amplification. So in the lower tier where you probably won't receive that much damage, she could still do her stuff, and be useful there. So I think she is still decent, and I think you can use her in the S tier. In terms of her skill utility, she can definitely give your Magic team a good buff. In the A tier, nothing much has changed, but I did remove Platin because I think, again, with more Magic heroes and more options being available, I don't think Platin suits the Magic team much more, and I think you are better off, even using Regenlave if you do have that option, okay, compared to Platin. Sage is still actually there, and I initially wanted to remove him, but I felt that he is still decent in terms of his passive, even though his skills may lack the damage, but passive wise he is still pretty good, and he is definitely kind of like a worse off version of Scold, because they both have the ability to reduce defense by 10% each turn up to 50%. This does stack with Baal, by the way. So you can most likely also use Sage with Baal, or just if you don't have a Scold, well-built Scold but you have a well-built Sage, you can of course use Sage as well, but bear in mind that his damage will not be doing too much, and his bulk I think is also on the lower side at this point in time. Okay. Next up, we have the Universal team. So the Universal team has been dominating for the past 2 months, in fact. Okay, this is the very standard Universal team that you have, even up till now. Wukong, Judas, Abel, Anti, and Rudy. Okay, with Rengrade as a possible option. And of course, these are the other options also possible for Universal teams, but I have not actually seen them being used anymore. People only rely on these 5, and that's pretty much it. Okay, but with Baal's introduction, we actually have a different option for the Universal team, whereby you can run Wukong, Judas, Abel, Baal, and Anti, which means you don't have Rudy anymore as the bulk increaser. Okay, Baal actually, not only helps the Universal team do damage, she can also become the speed leader for the Universal team, which I have shown in my video on Baal's review, so you can go check that out on how I actually used her in the Universal team. She is also one that can provide some defense for the Universal team with her isolation capabilities, and with Anti in place, you can have skill nullification as well as isolation going on at the same time, which will really reduce the damage you take. Rudy is definitely an option. I'm not saying that he's completely not good and should not be used anymore, but bear in mind that for Rudy's case, his bulk is really good. He provides really good bulk for your entire team. He is also used if you do have the ambush set, which means he can straight off reduce 3 turns of the enemy's buff durations. Baal has that similar capability, but she doesn't have the skill priority to carry that off, right? Baal does have 2 skills that can reduce buff duration, which is really good, but in terms of efficiency, Rudy may still have the upper hand because his skill is a non-damaging skill, which means that gives him priority. So it's still possible to play around with more options here now in the Universal team, and I think that's a good thing. Now for the S tier, I took out Eileen because I don't think she really fits in the Universal team anymore. I took out Eve as well, because I feel that your Universal team is just too solid and too strong. In fact, anyone below the S tier probably won't even be used. Some people may run Dire for some immunities, and suffocation, that's fine. Clement for heals, Platin for 1 HP conversion, but beyond that, I don't really see the rest being used at all, in fact. Okay, so yeah, that's why they are in the S tier and A tier respectively, based on their skill sets and usability and utility in the current meta. Okay, the dev team, okay, has not changed at all. I did not even touch them. Yeah, so there is still this team. This is pretty much the dev team that is well loved, I guess, by many people. I didn't even try to put Baal inside here because I just think that everything is just too tight and too well synergized. Okay, so dev team is what it is. Okay, tank team. Tank teams are less used right now. In fact, some of the players that I face in friendlies do use tank teams, and they are really strong. So the only thing I can change in is putting in Baal and degrading Radgrid. The reason why I degrade Radgrid is because, well, she doesn't really work much of a passive without offensive members, right? So besides that, she only has the isolation casting, which Baal can do much better than Radgrid, because Baal has a higher chance to blend the isolation, and she also has other skills that can do isolation, can eliminate, and I think paired with tank team units which lack damage, Baal's utility actually helps a lot, because elimination conveniently gets rid of 1 hero on the enemy team. You have Platin, who could also convert HP to 1. So this makes tank teams life a lot. So this makes the life of tank team users actually a lot easier compared to before. So Baal actually has a So Bile, I feel, has a pretty good spot in the tank team as well. And since she has HP swap, she can also reduce HP, from the enemy side, which also helps tank teams in a way. The other heroes I didn't touch much, but I did include Abel in the S tier because I do see that there are people using Abel as the main DPS of the tank team, which kind of borderlines makes it pretty similar to universal teams as well, except that they may not use Wukong. Okay, so Abel is definitely a good candidate as a DPS. I may even think of pushing him to SS tier and switching down Daya, because Daya is, I still don't see her used as much. Whereas for Abel, I think this is probably something that I need to change, but I didn't change it in time for the video. Okay, and nothing much here in the A tier. I mean, you can use these units; they are still decent for the tank team. Okay, but they could get shredded really quickly. So that's all I have for the PvP side, and with that we are going to look at the PvE side. Okay, there's gonna be a lot of changes actually. Now if you remember, in June I do have this lineup. In June, that was when Ares was just introduced, and we decided to put her in the SS tier because she is pretty much a must-have for your dual raid level 9. Okay, without her you will not be able to do it at all. But currently in the SS tier, I have switched away Dylan's. Okay, because I feel that Dylan's utility in PvE is a lot reduced because he doesn't really gel well with in standard raids. He can be used in Heavenly Stairs for sure, but that's just one mode, because in other boss fights, if he is used along with Yonji or Dillo, yeah, if he is used with Dillo, the minus 4,000 defense that he and Dillo does is actually going to negate out your 70% defense drop from, let's say, Yuri or Rachel if you use Rachel. So that is not exactly very good, because 70% defense drop is definitely going to be much more than just a flat 4,000 drop. So that is why I feel that he should be in S tier at most, because he doesn't really get used because of his defense drop in a variety of modes anymore. Of course, if you do want to use him as a 3-man DPS, that is also possible, but we have Abel now, and I think Abel is so much easier to use compared to Dylan's, who you need to use his awakening skill before he can even hit 3 targets. And besides that, the SS tier, nothing much has changed, but you do realize that right now I've actually labeled levels, recommended levels for certain heroes, because if you do not hit a certain level for this hero in PvE, you can't use it. I mean, it's not recommended to be used. Like, for example, if you have a Valika at level 48, you cannot let her enjoy the fighter soul. She won't be at her best, right? And for support heroes like Ares, if you don't have her at level 44, then what use, does she have? Because she needs to give the 100% accuracy rate increase for dual raid. And if you don't have her at level 44, you're not gonna get it from her exclusive items, okay? So it's gonna go on for a while. I think this is quite a good change and good addition, I would say, for you guys. Okay, so I hope you do appreciate this. Moving on to S tier. Okay, previously we did have this amount of heroes only, but you see that I have so many heroes right now in the S tier, right? Okay, so mainly first things first, Bile is new. Why did I just straight up put Bile in S tier? Remember about her passive again, level 44 passive. Reduce enemy defense by 50%. In that case, you are going to save using Yuri's skill actually. You may not even need to use Yuri's skill, and you can still do decent damage in your runs. Okay, that is the same reason why Dylan's was being used. That's the same reason why Sage was being used in Heavenly Stairs, because of the passives. Okay, so Bile actually provides a really good spot in PvE, especially in Heavenly Stairs as well. If you want to use her in dungeons, that's also possible, because I'm actually trying that out. So I'm having a frontline magic lineup, and then I have my DPS. And because she is also a magic hero, which means she will go really well if you use Rin or Yonji. Okay, so it's all gonna sync very nicely. I have moved Rudy down to A tier. The reason for that is because I don't really see Rudy being used as much anymore, but he's still pretty good, especially for newer players. Newer players probably want to make use of the skill nullification so that they do not take too much damage, and especially now in the Bile dungeon, skill nullification from Rudy is going to help you so much. But I feel that his usage is really limited to certain occasions, and I think mainly he's also just used in siege defense, so that's why I shifted him down, because his usage is very niche. Okay, he's not like the rest of the S tier heroes where they can be used in so many different situations and you can last with them. Rudy, I mean, let's just say you do use his skill nullification, but it's only one time and you have to wait for the cooldown to finish before you can cast the next skill nullification. And trust me, Rudy's skill cooldown is not short at all, right? So I don't think he is as good as the others in the S tier. I feel like in the A tier, I think that's where he belongs. And of course, I shifted a lot of heroes here in the S tier. One hero that you might not have seen coming up across the months, that's Vanessa. My usage for Vanessa has increased across the past 2 months. Surprisingly, how you can use her is actually for her to reset awakened skills in the magic team with Valika. So even if you do have Valika with the reset awakened skill, you can also use Vanessa. That will give you the third awakened skill after Valika has done both of hers. And with her being a magic hero, that makes her more useful than Seek in that case, because she goes very well with Rin. So you can run a team like Valika, Vanessa, Rin, Yuri, and there you already have 4 magic heroes to proc Rin's passive to increase crit and lethal damage. And that increase in crit and lethal damage is going to help you so much. Trust me, in PvE, okay? In fact, you can also use Vanessa in Guild Dungeon, because there are some occasions where you can actually use up to 3 Valika awakened skills in Guild Dungeon, and that's gonna help you so much. So Vanessa is currently S tier, and I'm really looking forward to her Myth Awakening, because I think that will really cement her position in PvE as well, okay? And of course, for Yuri and Colt, I've labeled them at usable at level 44, but to be frank, Yuri and Colt can be used without level 44. It's just that with level 44 exclusive item effects, you are able to increase their usability a lot more, because Colt will provide paralysis immunity and Yuri will actually increase damage on offensive magic and universal enemies with her awakened skill. So this really broadens their usability a lot more. Dylan's is actually going to reduce block rate at level 44, so that's pretty good. And of course, the rest are still pretty standard. You probably want a level 42 Rosie for decreasing AoE damage, 5-man target damage if I'm not wrong. And this will really help you in your raid, because the raid bosses do 5-man AoEs, especially in item raid and jewel raid where they hit really hard in level 9. So Rosie is going to help you there a lot. Eileen is still here, even though she's less used because there's the Fenrir, May and Colt combination, but Eileen is actually really good with Galidus. Okay, she will provide a much greater buff than what Colt can provide. I mean, Colt can't even provide physical attack increases for Galidus, so the only person Galidus can rely on is Eileen for physical attack buffs. Reginlay for block rate reduction, Life Streamer Scope for heals, cleanse, and also for increase of lethal damage. Judas for increased damage on the enemies, Dyer for immunities of bleed and poison, and Freya for crit damage increase. Pretty much that gives you your S tier. Now the A tier has also gone through some changes. Mainly that Chip is here now, and Orly as well. So the reason why I put Chip at level 42 is because he gains the ability to reduce block rate by 40% for 8 turns. And you might think how this is usable in PvE. Don't forget, he also provides reflect immunity. So in PvE, instead of using your heroes with reflect immunity like Aragon in Galidus Dungeon, Galidus Raid, I think you can actually go with Chip. Because as we know from the guides, you don't really have to reduce Galidus's fixed damage awakened skill. Just let it happen. And you can receive the damage. Your May can receive that damage and in turn reduce her HP and deal more damage to Galidus. But the thing is, the reflect from Galidus is pretty tricky. So that is why I think Chip, being an offensive hero, actually fits well there, and you can actually get a 3-man base 3-man offensive team already. So Chip has his utilities, I feel, in PvE, but again, it's very niche, so that's why he's just in the A tier. Same goes for Orly too. Orly is actually used in accessory raid, if you have seen the videos. She may be used in dual raid, but I'm not too sure if there's actually space for her. But accessory raid, she can definitely be used, and her amplification buff comes in at level 44. So that is why I put her A tier as well, because she is also pretty niche. Okay, she will give you that one-time boost or a few times boost and call it a day. So you have to use her properly. Make sure she doesn't take too much damage, otherwise she will also die pretty fast. The rest of the A tier, nothing much has changed. I mean, Clemith is still good for the heals. Truth. I actually use Truth a lot more in Siege Defense now because of the special mode, special difficulty, where they actually take damage from reflex. So I actually use Rudy's Truth, Evan, and Fenrir. And that can actually clear special difficulty really well. So Truth has good utility, and she also provides stun immunity. Zahara for incapacitation when needed. Scout does decrease defense and increase magic allies damage on offensive and universal enemies. Sage is also to reduce physical attack and defense per turn. Anti to reduce magic attack and provide skill nullifications for you, especially in Isabella raid. Red Grid actually got shifted upwards from the B tier because I feel that you can actually now form a 4-man offensive with a Red Grid on your team. Okay, so she's also a little useful for dungeons, I would say, because dungeon boss HP isn't that high, so you can use Red Grid with Mei, as I've shown in my previous videos. Eve is also shifted upwards. The reason why Eve is shifted upwards is because she can also be used in Heavenly Stats as a DPS. She is kind of the poorer version of Milia, if you want to think about it, but the fact that Eve is a magic hero and has chain attack and has pretty good AoE damage, she is also a prime hero, so she has a lot more stats than a regular magic DPS. So Eve definitely has some utility as well in PvE. The ones that got pushed up from B tier as well are Espada and Jave. Now I've seen more and more Espada being used as a DPS in the floors 1 and 2 for Heavenly Stairs because of her very fast skill animations and because the enemies have really low HP, so Espada hits very fast and very hard, and she allows you to compete for timing. Same goes for Jave, fast animations, AoE damage, and yeah, that's pretty much why they are kind of like in A tier. So you can definitely use them as very good DPSs in Heavenly Stairs. Rachel, standard, she's there because she's the PvE queen. Rook is usable in raids, item raid for cooldown increased immunities. Lower floors, of course. Sig is definitely always good because of his reset. Chloe as a raid support, Hayong as siege defense, or even Galidus raid support. Ariel for castle rush support, Nox for farming, and also because he's a death hero. Aragon for guild raid support, and Lina is just a really good offensive buffer overall. Okay. Now in the B tier, I did move Jack down. I did move Jack downwards because I didn't really see his utility that much in PvE at all. He does have 2 5-man AoEs, he does have 2 turn buff duration with decrease, and I think those are the most useful aspects of him. Okay, he does heal as well when he uses skill. So I think those are the most useful aspects of him, but I just can't think where I can possibly use him at this point. Because in Heavenly Stairs we have able to do all the AoE damage anyway, which is pretty fast, and you save on skill animation time. So I don't see why Jack was in A tier. So I push him down. Okay. The rest in A tier, those that have went up, those that have not are just remaining. I actually pushed Evan up actually from the C tier. He was previously in the C tier. As I mentioned, I'm using him in siege defense, and he's really good there for his reflex. So that is why I think in the B tier he still stands a pretty good chance. And the rest really are just being there for, they can be used occasionally. Like Platine, he is used in siege defense as well sometimes for fixed damage lowering. Chris is because of the death, 5 for freeze immunity. Mist for block rate reduction. Noah is actually a pretty fast DPS in Heavenly Stairs as well if you want to use her in the lower tiers. But being a Smith special, I think using Espada is so much better because Espada also has additional buffs in Heavenly Stairs itself. Ran grid for lethal rate increase and defense increase, but I don't really see that much use for her except in siege defense as well. Okay, and the rest are actually, still the same. Taka, I've actually labeled the level 50 on him if you really want to use him, even though he's not that great because he is still a DPS, so he has to be level 50. Soy has to be at level 44 for her Guild Dungeon Specialist effect, okay, and the rest, yeah, as I mentioned, still the same. Now in the C tier, I have moved Eve up, I moved Iris down, I've moved Lee down. So Lee and Iris are, I think, practically useless in PvE right now. The rest still have very limited users. But unfortunately, I have to put Teo in the C tier. I'm so sorry. I feel that I even wanted to put him in the D tier because he was previously in the D tier before he Myth Awakened, and even after he Myth Awakened, I don't really see much use for him. His skill effects, isolation and buff duration decrease is found on other heroes as well who have better passives. The only thing that redeems him from being in the D tier is his Fear immunity, which, we don't really have any bosses that cast Fear at the moment. So he is not actually essential, but until we get bosses that do cast Fear on your team, then I think Teo won't be used. And when that happens, then Teo can be used, So that is his possible saving grace, so I put him in the C tier, but it is very forced. Okay, compared to the rest of the C tier that actually has potential use. Yeah, but yeah, Teo being Teo, Yeah, so yeah, that's all I have for the PvE side. And do let me know what you think of the tier list, and if you have any disagreements, do voice them as well. I love to hear your opinions, especially for the newer heroes. So big shout out to my channel members ZMD Phoenix, Yamaki, Hibiku, and Reggie Bautista for the support. Stay tuned for more videos. Thank you so much and see you!